Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation, Where We're Going, We Don't Need Code. An introduction to the Power Platform. A bit about me, I'm Keith Atherton. I've been a software developer and solutions architect for over 20 years, and I've worked for various companies and sectors in the UK and USA. I'm now based in Edinburgh in Scotland. I'm also a LinkedIn Learning instructor and Power Apps super user. And if you have any questions, feel free to connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. This session is part of the SciFiDevCon event, and a big thank you to Brian Gorman for organising it. Feel free to check out other sessions after this one. Okay, so what we'll cover in this session is what is the Power Platform, an example solution, combining Power Platform with Azure, how to get started with the Power Platform yourself, and Power Platform certifications. So first up, what is the Power Platform? So the Microsoft Power Platform, it's a collection of low-code, sometimes referred to as no-code services as well, and it allows you to develop various things. So there'll be things like internal web apps, chatbots, reports, and many other things as well. And as it's a Microsoft product, it does integrate very well with other Microsoft products such as Azure and Dynamics 365 and Microsoft 365. And we'll take a look later on, particularly around Azure, of how we can connect it with the Power Platform and extend it further. When we look at the business case for using Power Platform, and to be honest, any other low-code service out there, you'll hear things around accelerating innovation, collaborative apps. You can actually collaborate with others. You can actually work with professional developers or pro code or code first, depending on what you hear, as well as with the low code and no code options. You can actually extend things like the Power Platform by creating custom components using code and then use them within a Power App or another part of the Power Platform. Because you can develop very quickly and easily, it does mean that again, developers and non-developers are able to use these platforms. So it means a lot more people can get involved and create things. You don't need to rely just on the development team, and you can reduce costs potentially as well, because it can be a fast development cycle. Most of these tools rely on things like drag and drop and very intuitive user interfaces. You can resize things, reposition things, make it very easy to customize and change things. And when you go on the website as well, you will see business cases. You can see some here with Virgin Atlantic and some other organizations there as well, about how they've used it to streamline operations or reduce costs or just make things a lot easier to perform within operations. So when we look at the Power Platform, I always see Power Platform as an umbrella term. That is the platform itself, but within it we've got several services. So you can see from the icons there, the main ones we've got are Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, and Power Pages. And below those we've got some shared services as well that get used throughout those other main 5 services. So things like data connectors, AI Builder, and Dataverse. And what we'll do is we'll actually look at these one by one and just see what they do exactly. So first up, let's look at Power BI. We've got a screenshot of it there. Microsoft say, make informed, confident business decisions by putting data-driven insights into everyone's hands. Right, what does that mean? Short version, reports. Okay, I may be shortchanging it a bit. It's not just reports. You can create dashboards which can contain one or more reports. You can have paginated reports, ones that are in a page style, so you can easily print them off or export them to PDF or email them to other people. So there are a lot of options there. Dashboards, they're particularly good. You can ask questions of the data. You can type in natural language, give me the number of sales for last month. Give me the largest sale we've had this year. It will actually go away, go through the data and return the answer for you. So there is a lot more to it, but typically reports is the main use case, one of the main use cases with Power BI. So next up, Power Apps. Microsoft say, turn ideas into organizational solutions by enabling everyone to build custom apps that solve business challenges. Again, what does that mean? Short version is internal web apps. So we can see in the screenshot just there's an app there. We can see we've got some plant machinery or something there. We've got several options, details, buttons, things you would typically see in an app. We'll look at Power Apps a bit more later on, but the short version is it's a web app. It means you can click and drag, you can resize things very easily, you can put code behind things, they can become as sophisticated as you want them to be. It's not just basic simple apps. You can actually do quite a lot with them. And because they're a web app that run in a browser, or they can run within a wrapper app on a mobile device as well, you can actually use them on pretty much any device. You can use them on PCs and laptops, tablets, and mobile devices as well. And again, we'll look into that one a bit more in detail later on. Next up, Power Automate and Microsoft say boost business productivity to get more done by giving everyone the ability to automate organizational processes. So the short version of that, as it sounds, is that you can automate processes. So the example there, we've got a visual workflow, which is the studio that you use to create flows within Power Automate. You can create various types as well. You can have them run on schedules. You can have them run instantly, with a click of a button, or you can have them run automatically as well. And there's a few options around Power Automate where I really just covered cloud-based flows there. But you can also have RPA. You can have desktop flows, robotic process automation, and these are ones that can they can run on the PC and perform repetitive actions again and again. Opening files, doing web scraping. You can do various things as well. So they can be cloud-based or they can be based on a PC as well. Next up, Power Virtual Agents. Microsoft say easily build chatbots to engage conversationally with your customers and employees. No coding required. And the short version is, as it sounds, chatbots. And in the example there, this is the designer that we have. Again, another visual workflow, very easy to build up, to have branching and conditions, to offer questions to users who use a chatbot. Do you want to do this option? Click yes or no, and depending on what the user selects, take them down another branch, down different options to offer them. So yeah, very, very powerful, very quick and easy to get up and running with these as well. So yeah, another great option in the Power Platform. And last up, we've got Power Pages. So Microsoft say quickly build low-code business websites for delivering vital information and services to your customers. And again, short version, as it sounds, is public websites. So as well as the website we can see in the example right there, we could just be showing something to any users, whether they be anonymous or not. But you could also have a portal where if you had like a customer portal or a vendor portal where they had their own credentials, where they could log in and see their own account, their own orders, their own details, whatever the case may be. You're able to build that in Power Pages as well. It's actually very, very rich in terms of features. And in terms of those shared services that I mentioned before, so again, we can see from the icons there, we've got the 5 main services, but we've also got these 3 shared ones. We've got data connectors, and this is a little how it sounds. We can connect data between different parts of the platform. Let's say, for example, we was creating an app using Power Apps. We could use a connector to connect to SQL Server, whether it be on-prem or hosted in Azure. We can connect to SharePoint, Excel, OneDrive. There are lots of options, and it's not just Microsoft services as well. We can connect to various other services out there. And if we didn't have a connector existing in the marketplace for what we need, it is possible to create your own custom connectors as well. And you do that by using the API definition. Say, okay, this is what I'm going to connect to, this obscure legacy app that I've got. There's no connector that exists out there. You can actually create one, and then it's very usable. Next up, we've got AI Builder, and as it sounds, AI, artificial intelligence. There are a few models built in already, things like form recognition and so on, some common use cases. But you're actually able to train your own models as well. And a bit like with the data connectors, this is, again, it's shared across many others because Power Apps may need AI building in some cases. You may want it in Power Automate or elsewhere too. And the last one there, Dataverse. Dataverse is really the data storage option that comes with Power Platform. So this is, it's got many different uses, but one common use is for relational data storage, a bit like SQL Server. So you've got the concept of tables with columns. You can store files in there as well. It's very easy to turn on auditing. When data gets changed, you can have an audit log, recall all of the changes that you need as well. So yeah, they're the three shared services. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at an example solution that's going to use some of these Power Platform services. So let's say we've been given some requirements for a new system. We want a database to store the data. We want an internal web app for users to perform CRUD operations there. So they're going to view, create, edit and delete records within this app. We want a management report to report on the data and summarize it in some way. And we want some email notifications to users when records get created. So what we're going to do is create a very, very simple architecture for this solution. So in terms of the database, we talked about Dataverse being a data storage option. When we talked about internal web apps, we're going to use a Power App to develop that. For the management report, we're going to use a Power BI report. And to create email notifications, we're going to use a Power Automate flow. Now, because this session is an overview, it's not a full day workshop going into detail of everything and building everything from scratch. We're just going to look at this simple solution from a very high level. So first up is the Dataverse. Again, this kind of database, this data storage solution that we've got. So Dataverse gets created within a Power Platform environment. And each environment is created under a Microsoft Azure AD tenant as well. So for the example there, we've got the Contoso Corporation tenant. Within there, we've got multiple environments. Now the environments are geographically located. So on the left there, let's see there, Contoso USA. We've got a dev, test and production environment. So 3 different environments there. You can create environments for whatever you need. So you can create them based on the geographical location or the domain within your organization. You may want one for HR, one for finance, one for operations, for example. And again, with the example we can see there, we've got them for development, test and production environments as well. So again, depending on the use cases, and you can move components between environments as well. So one example is using development to perform the development, migrate it to test for user acceptance testing, and then migrate it to production so that users can actually use it in a live system. And also the Dataverse as well, I should say it's actually built using Azure services under the bonnet as well. So we've got things like Azure SQL database underneath to hold things, but there are many different Azure services holding it together, giving it various features. So Dataverse is actually administered in the Power Platform portal in a web browser. There's an example there you can see on the screen. So you can see at the bottom of the screen we've got a preview of the data where we can see records showing things like phone numbers, contacts, account names and so on. At the very top you can see there are options where you can create a new, so you could maybe create a new table or create new columns in tables. You can change and create relationships. You've got various things under data experiences where you can create forms and views and charts and various things as well. So again, as you can tell, it's not using SQL scripts. It's designed to be very easy and intuitive to use. Again, whether you come from a developer or a non-developer background, it's supposed to be able to be usable by anyone pretty much. And while I've mentioned relational data, there are options there for non-relational file, data lake and many other options in terms of data storage as well. So next up, we're going to look at creating the internal web app. Again, we mentioned about using Power Apps for this. And to do this, that's actually going to be developed using the Power App Studio in a web browser again. Again, the Power Platform is cloud-based. It's cloud first. So most things are done within a web browser. In this case, there is a mock-up of an app there called TPS Report Management. This is a very busy app, but just a demo one that I created to really show the different types of controls available within Power Apps, and that's not comprehensive either. It's just really to show you can have text labels, text inputs, drop downs, all the common things you would expect within a web app. You could even create charts. You can even embed Power BI charts as well, and make it as sophisticated as you need to. So a bit more of a close-up of the Power App Studio here. We can see the main app within the middle of the screen. That's what we're previewing at the moment. On the left, we've got things where we can choose screens and other things like components, which are reusable parts within an app. On the right hand side, we've got the properties. So when something is selected in the tree view on the left, we can then select properties to say, okay, what is the fill, color, or image? What are the positions? What sizes do they have? Depending on what is selected. And then at the top, we've got the ribbon bar, lots of options. There's ways you can insert things within the app. Again, I want a combo box here or a button there. And where it says FX along the bar and it says RGBA, which is building up a color right there, that's actually the formula bar where you can actually write code behind. So in that case, that is just for the fill property with that particular color, which is white. But if you had the button selected, you could add a lot more code that could perform an action like insert a record into a database table, update a Dataverse table record, or actually pop up a message or perform some other action as well. And when you're using Power Apps, if you're looking to get started yourself, there are plenty of templates to help you get started. So if you've got the dreaded blank page and you don't know where to begin, you can always look at the templates. This is not the full list, there are a lot there. But you can say, okay, I want to build something like a service desk app or a site inspection app. And they will actually give you that as a starting point. So you can then tweak it and make it your own, or you could just use it as a demo and have a look around and see how it works, see what the buttons do, how data gets connected to it. So it could be a really, really good starting point. I did mention before about connectors very briefly as well, but a bit more about them. A connector is not just used for Power Apps, it's used throughout the Power Platform. And a connector is a proxy, it's around an API basically. If you need to connect to another system, that's what it helps you do. So you can use it for Power Automate, Power Apps, you can use it for Azure Logic Apps as well. And many different examples for connectors. This is not the full list, there are hundreds of them. But you've got things for like Office 365, OneDrive, Dropbox, Twitter, the list goes on, and it's always being added to. And again, as mentioned before, if you have one, if you're trying to work with a system and you want to integrate and there's not a connector available, it is possible to create your own custom connector by using the API definition. And there's some good walkthroughs on how to do that as well. So you're not limited at all. But what we'll do is we'll look at some of the options on the screen. Let's go ahead and highlight one of these. So I've highlighted one there, OK Document, which is done by an independent publisher. Again, it's not just limited to Microsoft products or Microsoft provided connectors. You can go ahead and create your own and put them in the store, or again, they can go to non-Microsoft services like Twitter, Dropbox, and many others. But this one here for OK Document, independent publisher, and at the bottom it's by Solitia Slovensko, so it's by an entirely different organization. The icons that are mentioned underneath the OK document there, so just going from left to right, they signify that this connector will work with Azure Logic Apps, and then the blue arrow is Power Automate, and then the purple icon is Power Apps. If you see the light bulb, it means it's in preview, and if you have the diamond there, it means it's premium, and that likely means you need more licensing to use it. So as you can tell from the list, there's a mix there. They don't all have the same icons in common. Many have got the big three there, the Azure Logic Apps, Power Automate, and Power Apps. Some are in preview, some are not. Some are premium, some are not. So depending on what you need it for, you can easily tell from this list of connectors. So next up, we're going to look at the report, and as we mentioned, Power BI is the service we're going to use for this one. Now this one, you can use some desktop software. It's entirely free, called Power BI Desktop, and you've actually got the full power there of creating the report. You can create visuals, you can easily preview the data, change relationships, and you can build up the visuals like this one. So we've got a very basic one here where we've got a line chart at the very top with a trend line that runs through it. And then at the bottom there we've got a bar chart, and it shows some of the metrics within the chart too. Now bear in mind this is really basic. To look at some more examples, we can go to good places like the Power BI community, and right there they've got the Power BI data stories gallery. So the example we can see there, which is by someone else, they've made a really cool looking one, looking at some financial information. You can see they've used maps, donut charts, cards that show the metrics as well. There's a bar chart in there. So there are tons of options, absolutely tons of options with Power BI. It's very sophisticated. So yeah, really good option for reports, as well as mentioned before, paginated reports and dashboards as well. Next up, for the solution, we want to create some email notifications, and for this we're going to use Power Automate and create a flow within Power Automate. So on the right hand side we can see the designer, and it's a very visual designer, very easy to use. In this case, this one's a bit of a different case, but we've actually got a trigger there at the very top. You always start with a trigger. In this case, it's when an item is created within SQL Server. So in other words, when a record is inserted, you can set the server name and database name to connect and point at a table which will be monitored. And then after that you can have one or more actions. In this case we just have one. It's a very simple flow. This one's going to send an email. You can tell by the icon this is for Outlook. It's going to be to this address. We can set the subject, we can set the body. You can see in the body as well it says TPS report submitted by, and then we can actually put in some expression values as well, in this case name. So it will be, TPS report submitted by Michael Bolton or whoever. And then the bottom left of the screen we've got a preview of that email that's come in as well. So very easy, very intuitive to use. You can make it a lot more advanced. You can use conditions, you can implement delays, you can have them run on schedules as well. Now for those of you who've used Azure Logic Apps, you may recognize that the UI, the designer, is actually quite similar. So in the screenshots there we can see top left is Power Automate and bottom right is the Azure Logic App designer. They look very similar. They both are web-based, and the reason they're very similar is because Power Automate is built on top of Azure Logic Apps. So if you've used one, the other one will be very easy to use as well. And just like with the Power Apps, we've also got Power Automate Flow templates. And again, these are really good starting points to say, I want to create one, connect it using my credentials, and either use it as is or you can modify it as well. So you can see some of the examples there. We've got ones that show the alarm clock at the start, get daily reminders from your Outlook.com email, ones that connect to Twitter, connect to Power BI, and so on and so on. And again, that's not the full list. There's lots of options there, lots of great templates to help you get started if you just want to play around and see how it works. Okay, so next up we're going to look at Fusion development, and this is where we can work, as it sounds, with others. So what we're going to do is look at some development personas, people who might work on a project, not just Power Platform, but just on any kind of development project. So let's look at a citizen developer, in this case someone who is not, say, a professional developer, but they want to build an app based on their domain knowledge. A professional developer, someone who is maybe familiar with code, running scripts and things like that. And also an IT professional, someone who maybe deals with the DevOps or deployment of solutions as well to different environments. So looking at these three, we'll see how they can work together in a Power Platform project. So because they can all work together on the Power Platform, they can all have access and play different roles within Power Platform. It means that the professional developer could develop a code first component that the citizen developer could actually use within a Power App. There are things like pipelines and other DevOps type features within the Power Platform, such as Power Platform pipelines and things like the IT professionals can use to move things and migrate them between environments. So they can actually work very well together. And there's some good articles on Microsoft Learn delving into this a bit more deeply. And we can see there from this screenshot as well, let's say the code first developers or the professional developers or pro code, whatever the term might be. You can use things like GitHub. You can use Azure DevOps as well, to host things and use DevOps that way. You can use Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code as well. And then you've got all the Power Platform services on the right hand side, and this is something that citizen developers can use. Again, very intuitive interfaces. You can drag and drop and resize things easily. But yeah, there's enough tools there where all these different personas can work together on a single solution. In terms of those code first or professional code options as well, there is something called the Power Apps Component Framework, or PCFs. This is where you can use HTML, CSS and TypeScript. You can actually build your own custom component. Some people have actually shared these with the community, which we can see on the screen right now, and this is in a place called the PCF gallery, and this is just a partial screenshot there where we can see people have created components and shared them for things like postcode validation. There's a ChatGPT control there as well. You don't have to share them publicly. You can just keep them internally within the organization. But this is a great way if you need something very custom with a very bespoke behavior, and it's not provided from the out-of-the-box Power Apps components, for example. This is a way you can build your own and have that bespoke experience if you need it. A very quick and brief mention on Power Platform licensing. Each of the services does have its own licensing. Sometimes the licensing is a bit nuanced as well. You might want a per app plan. In this case, we're just going to focus on Power Apps pricing here. So the screenshot shows we have a per app plan. We've got UK pricing shown. So a per user per app per month. It's that cost. If you want a per user plan and you've got a large estate of apps, it may be more cost effective at looking at the per user plan where you pay per user per month. And you've also got things like pay as you go plans where you might not use things very often, so it's just on active usage that you pay. Bear in mind this is again just a partial screenshot. There's a lot more to it than this. Some licenses get included with other licenses. So for example, Power BI Pro is currently included in your Microsoft 365 E5 license. So if you work at an organization and you've all got E5s, it may be that many of these features and Power BI Pro and some other things, they're already included in the licenses you have. So it's really worth paying attention to how the licensing works. Something that can help with that is a good site called Get Licensing Ready. It's a free Microsoft provided website where you've got guides and videos walking you through the licensing. You can take an exam at the end of it as well and you get a certification. So whether it be for Power Platform licensing, Azure licensing, developer tools, even legacy things within Microsoft as well. I find it really useful just to get my head around how does this work, how nuanced is it, what does it mean by paying by capacity, or what's included with this, what's an add-on, things like this. And one of the good things that I found with it, and I keep referring to, and is in the screenshot right there, is almost like a cheat sheet for the licensing as well. So in this case, we're looking at Power BI. We can see at the top it mentions Power BI Premium. This is just one of the pages. And in one of the boxes on the left, we've got licensing by user. So things like Power BI Premium per user, it's $20 per user per month, it's a standalone license, blah, 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 blah. So I find this handy if I need a quick table or a quick bullet point reference to say, hang on a minute, I need to embed a Power BI report, what do I need? Or we're going to scale up, we've got premium P5s required, I've got this many virtual cores, what do I need? Very, very handy reference. And as mentioned before, with the Power Platform being a Microsoft product, we can combine it with many things, including Azure. And as Azure is one of the, maybe the flagship service, one of those main cloud computing services out there, we'll look at some options how we can combine Power Platform with Azure. So in terms of the solution we looked at before, we looked at a very Power Platform-y solution. Everything was kept in the Power Platform. However, I should say you're not forced to keep everything in the Power Platform. You can use Azure, you can use on-prem, you can use other things if you wish. You can just use Power Apps and then nothing else in the Power Platform. It doesn't lock you in or tie you in any way. So the example we had here was the Dataverse as the data store, and then we had the Power App, Power BI report, and the Power Automate flow. What we're going to do is look to change that Dataverse to Azure SQL Database. So that way, let's say if we've already got a legacy Azure SQL Database in use, we want to use that. We don't want to be forced to use Dataverse or something else. We can actually connect all of these Power Platform components to that Azure SQL Database. It just means we need to use the connector for SQL Server. Some of them, again, may require premium licensing or some other things to be able to use it, but it often is an option. And talking of legacy, if you did have a SQL Server on-prem, again, it doesn't always need to be cloud focused here, that's an option too. So next up, using a SQL Server on-prem, and the way we can handle traffic between that and the Power Platform components is using an on-prem data gateway. So again, that's another option as well. If you wanted the ultimate performance, using the Dataverse provided by Power Platform is part of the product, so it has an almost direct connection. If you use anything else, even though SQL Server's Microsoft, whether it's on-prem in Azure or OneDrive or anything else, it does have to go through an API management layer, and it can add just a little to the performance. But depending where things are located and your architecture, it may not actually be too noticeable. But it's just something to bear in mind. Next up, there's a good website here, Microsoft Power Platform on Azure. There's a really good page here where you can learn more about how Power Platform and Azure can be combined together. Low-code application development on Azure, another good website, Microsoft.com, where you can learn a bit more about low-code application development and a few use cases and how you can build things. And this one's particularly good actually, the Azure and Power Platform architectures. So there's a really good Azure architectures page, and you can actually choose other things like Power Platform, Microsoft 365, and many other things to say, I want to combine Azure with this, I want to combine Azure with that. And the one with Power Platform, we can see we've got 67 results. There's a couple there showing on the screen, but it's really great for sort of laying out the architecture of how does this work with this. You know, I can see the one on the right there for build a sports analytics architecture on Azure. We've got things like ADF is in use, Azure Data Factory rather. On the right hand side we can see uses of things like Power Apps and Power BI. How do they connect together? What would the networking look like? Things like this. So there's some really good hypothetical use cases of how things can be used together. So really interesting. There's also a really good blog post where you can meet the developers who do this kind of combination of Power Platform with Azure. You get to, it talks you through the developers, their organizations, the examples of their architecture, and how you can get involved yourself as well. So in terms of getting started with a Power Platform yourself, we'll look at a few options right here. So first up, you can get a free trial. You can get a 30-day Power Apps trial plan. Again, some of the other services have got their own free trials and options as well, but we'll just focus on Power Apps for the moment. So yeah, we can do the free trial. Again, depending on the licensing, if you've got a license through Office 365, you've already got access to some of these features already to try them. You do need to use a work or school account to sign up for this trial though. Another option you've got as well is the Power Apps Developer Plan. This is something else. So this is where you can use a lot of the features. You get a free development environment, so you can build and test Power Apps. You can use Power Automate. You can use that Microsoft Dataverse, that data storage that we talked about. And the way you can do this, you can either sign up on the Power Apps Developer Plan website, or you can sign up if you've got Visual Studio Dev Essentials as well, which we've got on the screenshot just there. So next up, we'll look at some Power Platform certifications for those who want to learn a bit more about it. So we've got a bunch of certifications right there. So we do have a fundamentals PL 900 for Power Platform fundamentals, but beyond that there are several associate ones as well. Some are a bit more Power BI focused, some are a bit more Power Appsy focused with a Power Platform App Maker associate, and there's also an expert level one for the Power Platform Solution Architect expert as well. Okay, so just to recap what we covered, we did actually cover quite a lot there. So what is the Power Platform? An example solution, combining Power Platform with Azure, how to get started with the Power Platform yourself, and some Power Platform certifications. So we've reached the end. If you've got any questions, feel free to connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. And thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions at SciFiDevCon. Bye for now.